Okay, so for this deep dive, you really went for it this time. I mean, these news articles are dated January 20th, 2025.
Yeah.
So are we in some kind of alternate reality? Because they're reporting on Donald Trump's second inauguration.
It's a pretty wild thought experiment, right? We obviously know this isn't our current reality,
Right.
but these articles paint a really vivid picture of a world where 2020 and everything after went down a very different path.
It's like we're peeking into a parallel universe where the election had a different outcome and well, everything that follows.
Yeah.
We've got pardons, executive orders. There's even this talk about sending astronauts to Mars.
Right.
It's a lot to process.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack. I think the most striking detail that really jumps out at me from these articles is the mass pardon
Yeah.
of almost 1,500 people
Wow.
who were involved in the January 6th Capitol attack.
I mean, that's not just controversial. That's practically unheard of, right? Like, I mean, it's one thing to pardon a few close associates,
Right.
but this is a blanket pardon
Yeah.
for a massive group of people who directly challenged our democracy.
Yeah, it's a bold move even for Trump. And it
Mhm.
raises all sorts of unsettling questions about what this says about accountability,
Right.
about the rule of law. I mean, just imagine the impact on public trust in the justice system, you know?
Right.
This isn't just about those specific individuals.
Right.
This really sets a precedent that could have ripple effects for years to come.
And that's just the first day, right? These articles suggest a whole wave of executive actions on immigration,
Oh, yeah.
climate change, social policy. I mean, it's like he's hitting the ground running,
Yeah.
but maybe not in the direction that a lot of people were hoping for.
Yeah, it's like he's taken the most divisive aspects of his first term and just amplified them,
Yeah.
creating this like concentrated dose of political upheaval.
Right. Okay, let's take immigration as an example.
Okay.
Shutting down the border appointment program, suspending refugee programs,
Mhm.
declaring a national emergency at the border. He's even trying to end birthright citizenship. I mean, these aren't just like policy tweaks or adjustments. This represents a drastic escalation of his previous hardline stance.
Exactly.
And then there's climate change.
Yeah, the article mentions withdrawing from the Paris Climate Agreement for the second time.
Again?
Imagine the ripple effect of this decision. The U.S. abandoning the Paris Agreement could trigger a domino effect, leading other nations to follow suit.
Right.
It's a major blow to the already fragile global consensus on climate action.
It's almost like he's sending a message to the world, America first and the planet can wait.
Exactly, and the potential consequences both domestically and internationally are enormous.
It's a lot to process, and we haven't even touched on social policy changes, like revoking diversity programs and recognizing only genders assigned at birth.
Right.
Those are bound to be incredibly controversial.
These are moves that directly impact marginalized communities.
Right.
Revoking diversity programs could set back progress on equality for decades. And the policy on gender recognition is a direct attack on transgender and non-binary individuals.
Yeah, it's hard to see any positive outcomes from those actions,
Yeah.
but let's try to stay focused on what we can analyze here.
Sure.
Even if this is just a hypothetical scenario, what can we learn from these potential policy decisions?
I think the key takeaway is that political actions have far-reaching consequences. And these articles, while speculative, they
Yeah.
force us to confront uncomfortable possibilities and think critically about the impact of these choices.
It's a reminder that we can't be passive observers. We have to engage with the political process, hold our leaders accountable, and fight for the values we believe in.
Absolutely. And there's another layer to all of this. Remember, the articles mention Republican control of both houses of Congress.
Oh, right.
So this suggests a significant shift in the political landscape.
So it's not just about one man.
Right. It's about a broader movement, a realignment of power that could have lasting implications.
So we need to examine the factors that might have led to this hypothetical shift.
Exactly.
Was it dissatisfaction with the previous administration? A change in public opinion? Or something else entirely?
Right. Those are all good questions.
These articles don't offer all the answers, but they do provide some intriguing clues.
And those clues are what we'll be diving into next.
Okay.
We'll be exploring the political landscape of this alternate 2025, examining how Trump managed to regain power, and looking at the role of key players like J.D. Vance and Elon Musk.
So it's like we're piecing together a puzzle, trying to understand how this alternate reality came to be.
Yeah.
But what's even more important is figuring out what it means for the future, both in this hypothetical world and in our own.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we just explored a pretty jarring first day back in office for this alternate reality version of President Trump.
Yeah.
Pardons, executive orders, and a lot of uncertainty about what comes next. But to understand this version of 2025, we need to kind of look back at how we even got here, right? What happened between 2020 and now that led to this dramatic shift in the political landscape?
It's a puzzle with some missing pieces, but these articles give us some clues or breadcrumbs to follow. The fact that Trump is the first president in over a century to win a second term after losing the White House tells us this is no simple re-election.
Yeah.
Something big must have happened to create this result.
And it's not just him, right? The articles mention Republican majorities in both houses of Congress, so it's a complete power shift, not just a single person reclaiming the presidency.
Exactly. It really suggests like a fundamental realignment in American politics.
Yeah.
Perhaps there was a major event or a crisis that shook people's faith in the existing order.
Right.
Or maybe a slow-burning dissatisfaction with the direction of the country kind of reached a boiling point.
Yeah, the articles don't specify any events in particular.
Right.
But they do hint at a deep sense of disillusionment among voters.
Yeah.
Remember that line about Trump portraying himself as a savior?
Oh, yeah.
Chosen by God to rescue a faltering nation.
That's a really powerful narrative, and it speaks to a yearning for strong leadership, a desire for someone to come in and fix what's broken.
Right.
Whether or not that perception is accurate is a different story.
Right.
But the fact that it resonated with enough voters to bring about this outcome is significant.
Yeah, it's a reminder that narratives matter, especially in politics.
For sure.
The way we frame events, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what we believe in those things have a real impact on the choices that we make.
Absolutely. And it also highlights the importance of critical thinking and media literacy.
Yeah.
We need to be able to kind of deconstruct these narratives to separate fact from fiction and understand the underlying motives and agendas at play.
Okay, speaking of motives and agendas, let's talk about some of the key figures surrounding Trump in this alternate timeline. The articles mention J.D. Vance as his vice president.
Oh, yeah.
That's an interesting choice,
Yeah.
to say the least.
It's a very strategic one for sure. Vance, with his working class background and his conservative credentials, appeals to a segment of the population that was really crucial to Trump's victory.
Right.
Remember, he was once a critic of Trump.
Right.
But in this reality, he's embraced the Trumpian agenda, perhaps seeing it as a path to power or a way to influence policy from within.
It's like he's bridged the gap between the Trump base and the more traditional Republican establishment.
Exactly, and that makes him a valuable asset in this new political landscape.
And then there's the wild card, the one that really makes you scratch your head. Elon Musk,
Yeah.
leading the Department of Government Efficiency. How did that even happen? And what does that even mean?
It's an unexpected twist, for sure. Musk, known for his tech ventures and his bold pronouncements,
Yeah.
represents a certain kind of disruptor mentality. Perhaps in this reality, his image as an innovator, someone who gets things done, resonated with voters who were tired of bureaucratic gridlock.
But efficiency in government, that's not really what Elon Musk is known for,
Yeah.
right? He's more about pushing boundaries, taking risks, not streamlining processes.
You're right. It's a bit of a paradox.
Yeah.
Maybe in this alternate 2025, the idea of bringing in an outsider, someone from the private sector, was seen as the solution to government inefficiency.
Right.
Or maybe it was just another one of Trump's unconventional moves away to shake things up and grab headlines.
It's almost like he's assembled a cabinet of celebrities and provocateurs, a mix of familiar faces and unexpected newcomers.
There's definitely an element of spectacle to it, a desire to project an image of strength and disruption. But there's also a strategic calculation at play.
Right.
These are individuals who, for various reasons, have aligned themselves with the Trumpian vision for America.
Okay, so we've got a sense of how Trump might have regained power, and we've met some of the key players in his inner circle. But the big question remains, what does this all mean? What are the implications of a second Trump term?
That's what we'll be unpacking next. We'll delve into the long-term consequences of the events described in these articles. What happens after the inauguration, after the executive orders are signed?
Right.
What does a second Trump presidency look like in the years that follow?
Okay, so we've spent the last two parts kind of dissecting the events of this alternate 2025,
Right.
a world where Donald Trump returns to the White House.
Yeah.
We've seen his day one actions, analyzed the political landscape that brought us to this point, and met some of the key players in his new administration. But these articles don't just cover the immediate aftermath. They hint at a much larger plan, a long-term vision for America under a second Trump presidency.
It's like they're sketching out the beginnings of a new era.
Yeah.
one shaped by Trump's particular brand of politics and his ambitions for the country. It's a future where America reasserts its dominance on the world stage, not just through military might, but through economic influence, technological advancement, and cultural power.
There's that line about sending astronauts to Mars that really stands out to me.
Yeah.
It's a bold statement, one that echoes his other pronouncements about renaming the Gulf of Mexico and reclaiming control of the Panama Canal. It all seems to point to a desire to project American strength,
Right.
to reestablish a sense of national pride and exceptionalism.
It's a vision that definitely appeals to a certain segment of the population.
Yeah.
Those who feel that America's standing in the world has diminished those who yearn for a return to a time when the U.S. was the undisputed leader on the global stage.
But is it a realistic vision? I mean, can you really just declare a new era and expect the world to fall in line? These actions are bound to provoke reactions both at home and abroad.
You're absolutely right. There will be pushback. We've already discussed the outrage over the January 6th pardons,
Right.
and the immigration policies are almost certain to trigger legal challenges and protests.
And globally, withdrawing from the Paris Agreement for a second time. I mean, that would likely alienate allies and embolden adversaries. It's hard for me to see how this America First approach leads to anything other than increased isolation and instability.
It's a pretty precarious scenario.
Yeah.
One definitely fraught with potential pitfalls and unintended consequences. And that's what makes these articles so thought-provoking. They force us to confront the possibility that even the most outlandish scenarios can become reality,
Right.
and to consider the implications of those realities.
It's like we're looking into a distorted mirror,
Yeah.
seeing a reflection of our own world, but with the dial turned up to 11.
Yeah.
It's unsettling, but it's also a reminder that the future is not preordained. It's shaped by the choices we make, the actions we take, and the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and where we're headed.
That's the real power of these hypothetical scenarios.
Yeah.
They push us to think critically about the present, to
Yeah.
examine the forces that are shaping our world, and to consider the paths we might take as a society.
So, what can we learn from this deep dive into an alternate 2025? What insights can we take back with us to our own reality?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is the importance of vigilance.
Right.
Democracy is not a spectator sport, you know? It requires active participation and engagement from all of us. We can't just assume that things will work out, that the system will somehow correct itself.
Right.
We have to be informed, we have to hold our leaders accountable, and we have to be willing to speak out against injustice.
It's about recognizing that the future is not something that just happens to us. It's something we create together.
Exactly. And even though this deep dive has taken us into kind of a dark and unsettling alternate reality, I think there's a glimmer of hope in that realization. We have agency. We have a voice. And we have the power to shape our own destiny.
That's a powerful thought to end on. This has been a truly mind-bending exploration of an alternate future. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. And remember, the future is not set in stone. It's up to all of us to create the world we want to live in.